Hi everyone, and welcome to Exploring the Build. If you've just found this place, then welcome. And if you're returning, I'm glad to have you back. I'm Alex, and this is my channel where we explore and theory craft different character builds for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Today, we are continuing with our quick build series, where we'll be exploring a briefly summarized character build for D&D 5e. As always with our quick builds, if there's ever a build you'd like to see me explore in the future, be sure to let me know in the comments below. The concept for our build today comes from user Open World Addict, who wanted to see the Monster Slayer Ranger get a bit of love, similar to how our Alchemist Artificer did. In addition to this though, we're not just optimizing the Monster Slayer Ranger full stop, we're also going to go for a little bit of a Witcher type of theme. We're not going to make Geralt, I'll put that as a disclaimer right away. I don't know enough about Geralt besides having played Witcher 3, and I don't feel I can really mimic that character exactly. However, the idea of a sort of generic Witcher, or at least Monster Slayer, that could have a little bit of theme bleed into the Witcher world, that can definitely work. Now before I talk about the build or how we're going to go about doing it, let me address the multiple elephants in the room. Number one, the request is specifically for Monster Slayer Ranger, so we are not going to be using Blood Hunter or Witch Hunter from Geek and Sundry. Both of these classes some of you may be familiar with. Blood Hunter is a very popular but still homebrew subclass from Critical Role, whereas Witch Hunter is from Geek and Sundry, and it's the same sort of thing, just not as fleshed out. Now, if all you wanted was a Witcher-esque build, then either of those two homebrew classes would actually work pretty much perfectly. They're designed to be that type of darker Monster Hunter character. But we're not going to be using them for this build because we do want to focus on the Monster Slayer Ranger in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Sorry to disappoint. And like I said, we're not doing Geralt, we're doing our own Witcher type of character. Now that we got all that out of the way, let's jump into the build. Starting off in character creation with our lineage, we're actually going to go with Shifter. It was requested that we have a bit of a more gothic or darker type of lineage, like Shifter or Hexblood, and I really like the idea of picking Shifter here. If you wanted to be really on the nose about it, Shifter could kind of mimic what type of Witcher school we were in. Maybe not exactly, because I don't think a Witcher is meant to be placed in their school based on how their mutations flesh out, but the idea would be that we're picking a type of Shifter based on the type of Witcher school that we wanted to emulate and flavor our lineage characteristics as being more of like the teachings of that school specifically. If you didn't want to do that, then by all means any other lineage could certainly work, but I really like Shifter, and I specifically like Beasthide Shifter. Beasthide, after shifting, gains an additional point of AC as well as extra temporary hit points, in addition to the temporary hit points that a shifter normally gets when they shift. They're meant to be a little bit more tough and robust, and I like to theme this as though we are from the Witcher School of the Bear. That was pretty much the armor set that I used when I played Witcher 3. Now as for our stats, we're admittedly going to be really spreading ourselves thin here and getting a whole lot of different things, and admittedly it's a little bit absurd. Using the rules from Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, we're going to improve 3 different ability scores by +1. We're going to put 9 points into Strength, and a +1 there as well to bring it up to 16. We're going to put 5 points into Dexterity and use a +1 to bring that up to 14. We're going to put 4 points into Constitution and leave that at 12. We're going to put another 4 into Intelligence and leave that at 12 as well. And then we're going to put our final 5 points into Wisdom and improve that with a +1 too. Then we're leaving Charisma alone with 8. I know it's a weird distribution, but we're trying to be very mad for this very specific build. There are a lot of bases we're trying to cover here. As for our background, anything that feels like a monster hunter's background, or someone who has studied monsters, or something specific to a Witcher would all work. Talk to your DM, try to figure out what will work best for your character, and pick your favorite. Looking at the actual build now, We're going to be going with a very weird split of Ranger 16 and Artificer 4. I'll talk about Artificer in a little bit, but Ranger is obviously going to be the core thing we're building around with Monster Slayer Ranger. For our fighting style, we're going to pick up Defense Fighting style. And then for our weapon, we're going to pick up a Great Sword since we are strength based. And I would even suggest getting 2, and why don't you get 1 silvered? That way we can have a steel sword and a silver sword just like a Witcher would. In all honesty, because we're picking Monster Slayer as our subclass, I personally like to build Monster Slayer Rangers as strength-based Rangers. The reason is because we're trying to build around Slayer's Prey. Slayer's Prey is a consistent bonus action. As a bonus action, we can mark 1 enemy within 60 feet of us. Then, the first time each turn that we hit that target with a weapon attack, they take an extra 1d6 from the weapon. The benefit lasts until we finish a short or long rest, or if we designate another creature, meaning that there's actually no limitations on how often we use this, because we can just continuously designate new targets for our Slayer's Prey. This means that with a Great Sword or similar weapon, once per turn, that enemy is taking 3d6. Hunter's Mark can also stack with this, but if we were to use Hunter's Mark, it's going to cost us our concentration, and it's going to make us very bonus action heavy since Hunter's Mark is a bonus action, to move it is a bonus action, and to move Slayer's Prey is also a bonus action. So I think that, in all honesty, we might be better off saving our concentration spells for something else. We get protection from evil and good just as a Monster Slayer, and that can be a really nice defensive spell. So we probably want to save our concentration for something like that. Obviously, Hunter's Mark is technically better pound for pound than Slayer's Prey, but because Slayer's Prey is infinitely repeatable and it's not a spell, so it can't be counterspelled in that odd situation where your DM is a sadist, that can be pretty good on our end. But really, it's the main feature we're building around for damage, though we're not necessarily trying to build specifically for damage. Let's get to that. See, the other thing we get at level 3 when we become a Monster Slayer is Hunter's Sense. Hunter's Sense is kind of interesting. It informs what our Monster Slayer is supposed to be about. It says that as an action, we choose 1 creature within 60 feet of us, and we learn whether they have any immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities, as well as what those are. And now, on paper, this is a really, really good feature, but I think in practice it falls off quite a bit. From my experience, and this may be different for you, whenever I'm playing with my DM, usually if a creature has an immunity or a resistance and we hit it with that damage type, they'll tell us that it doesn't do as much damage as you'd expect, or it's not quite as effective as you thought it would be. The designers, of course, created this in a bit of a vacuum, assuming that DM isn't going to table talk in that sense, but knowing that that type of thing happens kind of makes this feature a little more lackluster, and makes me wish that there was a bit more of a mechanical boost to being this knowledgeable character that is meant to share their knowledge and expertise of monsters with their party. To that end, at level 4, after we've become a Monster Slayer, we're going to pick up the feat Fey Touched. Fey Touched is going to let us improve our intelligence by 1, which will eventually let us multi-class into Artificer, and it also lets us pick up Bless as a concentration spell. We can cast it once per day for free, and then we can cast it with any spell slots we have. The reason I really like Bless as our main spell is because it interacts in combat in a way that we want Hunter's Sense to interact in. Hunter's Sense isn't necessarily bad, it's just that its usefulness varies. Bless, on the other hand, can be flavored as us providing insight to our party members on how to fight the enemy that is currently in front of us. This is what I think the Monster Slayer should have been. It should have been the support ranger who knows the types of enemies that they're going up against and provides bonuses and buffs to their party because of that knowledge. Instead, the Monster Slayer on paper has a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of a damage boost, and then becomes oddly anti-caster oriented. They have a lot of bonuses to saving throws against enemies that are marked with their Slayer's Prey, so it's this weird idea of what exactly is the Monster Slayer trying to be. Personally, I think the Monster Slayer should be the support type ranger, and so we are going out of our way to pick up Fey Touched as our feat in order to improve our intelligence, as well as get the Bless spell to use Bless as our main support feature that allows us to share our monster knowledge with our party in order to come out on top in whatever combat we find ourselves in. And now, of course, it's time to talk about Artificer. Artificer we're picking for one reason and one reason only: the elixirs. The elixirs are going to mimic, within reason, the potions or salves or mutagens that a witcher would drink. Mechanically, is there really any reason we need these and we don't just buy specific potions that would actually be more useful to us in the D&D campaign that we're in? Not really, but we want them anyways to actually have a built-in potion mechanic to our theme, and because there are some kind of neat combos that we can pull off with it. With our elixirs, we of course get 1 per day for free, and then we can spend our spell slots to create more as well. The 1 per day we get for free is random. The ones we use our spell slots for, we get to choose what elixirs we want. I wouldn't actually spend any more than maybe 1 or 2 spell slots on our elixirs for this build, especially because we're going to actually be selfish with these elixirs. We really want either the boldness elixir or resilience. Boldness lets us add a d4 to attack rolls and saving throws, and it is basically the bless spell but without concentration and stackable with bless. Resilience likewise adds a +1 to our AC, and it is stackable with other concentration type spells that would also boost our AC. We don't have any of those, but just the fact that we can choose which one of these to drink to gain an extra benefit is pretty nice. For example, with Resilience, given that we picked Defense as our fighting style, assuming we just had standard Scale Mail with our +2 Dexterity, +1 from making that Scale Mail magical thanks to being an Artificer and using one of our infusions to make it magical with a +1 bonus, along with the Resilience potion and the Defense fighting style, and maybe we're shifted as well, we get a total AC of 20, which isn't too shabby for a character that's not actually building to have a really high AC. Now, the obvious downside to these elixirs are that they take an action to use, and we already have a lot of setup. If we want to use Bless as our main concentration spell, because that's going to make us feel like a Monster Slayer directing our party on how best to attack our enemies, then really that's the first action in combat. And then Slayer's Prey is our bonus action. That means that we wouldn't be getting to these elixirs until turn 2, and if we really dedicated our entire second turn to just drinking an elixir, we're not doing that much at all. So I would honestly save these to the point where either we're right about to go into combat and we're able to get that action in before combat actually starts, or until a really big combat is going to happen, where we know it's going to be going multiple rounds. I'm talking more than like 5 or 6. And at that point, maybe it's good to actually spend round 3 or 4 drinking the potion, gaining the bonus then, while we still hopefully have Bless and Slayer's Prey up, and then going all in on getting as many buffs up as possible. Like I said, mechanically it is a bit questionable, but overall for our theme, can really make us feel like a Monster Slayer who doesn't just know about the monsters they're fighting, but has prepped various alchemical mixtures and elixirs in order to boost their combat prowess to actually be able to both take down their opponent and survive the fight. And just like that, it's time for our summary. Honestly, I think we've done a pretty okay job at least of capturing all the different sort of ideas that we want to capture for this build. We can be a Witcher with a sword of steel and a sword of silver who knows what monsters they are going up against and is able to share that knowledge with their party in order to both survive and actually win the combat that they're going into. We also have some elixirs from a little bit of an odd dip into Artificer. Whether or not we actually use them, it at least lets us feel like we have something to do in our downtime to prep for fighting the monsters that we presumably going up against. Are these the most mechanically advantageous options? Probably not. A ranger monster slayer that just focuses on trying to get Slayer's Prey, maybe Hunter's Mark, or maybe still Bless up, would probably be a little bit better, and then of course just skipping over Artificer can work as well. But I think it adds a lot to our theme to have a built-in way for us to create elixirs / potions that you might miss out on if you were to just try to buy them in your campaign. That's not to say that we can't buy extra potions in our campaign. It's just nice to know that if we were trapped out in the wilderness for an extended period of time, we'd still be able to make our own potions ourselves. As for the later Monster Slayer features, as well as the optional features from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, I personally view those as largely optional. They're nice if we can use them or can pick them up, and if it is an optional feature that you're looking at, then it's totally up to you as to whether or not you want to use it, but none of them are going to heavily inform our theme more than what we've already picked up. So really that's all we have. A Monster Slayer who's meant to be more of a support damage dealer, as opposed to just the character that single-handedly goes out and slays the monster themselves. We have a party for a reason, so we might as well use them. Let me know what you thought of the build or what you would add or change to get closer to the concept of this Monster Slayer or Witcher type ranger, as well as how you would improve the Monster Slayer or what role you would see it taking on the battlefield. Thank you so much for coming on the journey with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.